Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I will be reading to you from two of my own fiction stories. These two were both written in response to the same type of prompt. For each, I got 3 random but interesting photos and had to use them for a story, 1,000 words max. I like writing to a variety of challenges and have done over 100 of these so far. You can find all my short stories via my website at ravensview.ca. The first story was written this January, just a week ago. The 3 photos were several happy people sprawled on a hill below a scarecrow-like sculpture, a detailed image of the Horsehead nebula, and an empty VW camper van in a parking lot. It's 983 words long. Rapture and Romance. We were a mismatched group. We'd all hung out together at Frosh Week, and as we were all from the same small redneck town. I was on a football scholarship. Tia, a tiny little hippie girl with beads, color-streaked hair, and swirly dresses, was doing a physics and astronomy double, and John and Joanne, both from Bible-thumping families, were in religious studies. They were a nice couple and not that pushy about religion, at least not to us. We decided to share a cheap house near campus, and we each had our own space. Only a 3-bedroom, but JoJo, as we called them, said they were okay to share a room. They seemed to have resolved the conflict between a growing physical attraction for each other and the strict rules of their upbringing. I was a firm atheist, and Tina was a mix of spirituality and science. Between the 4 of us, there were a lot of late-night discussions and too many heated arguments. After only a few weeks, things were already tense between us all, so Tia proposed a road trip to a nearby music festival. I splurged and rented a camper van, just like the one Tia said her parents took across Europe. The festival was scheduled for the fall equinox and was to be a mix of spiritual seminars, craft tables, food and drink vendors, and a series of classic rock bands. Sleeping could be cramped in the van, so JoJo offered to bring a tent. I had no trouble sharing the van with Tia, as I was already starting to fall for her, but she still saw me as definitely in the friend zone. The festival was awesome. Perfect fall weather, if a little crisp, a huge but friendly crowd, and great music. JoJo found a religious group to hang with that were blending in some pagan cultures. They seemed okay with that. I hit some seminars with Tia just to be with her. They were okay, but so was just sitting in the sun with a beer and a book. We all met up over supper to compare notes and seemed to have mellowed toward each other. As dusk fell, the music and dancing cranked up, and we headed out together for some serious partying. Tia and I lasted until 11, but JoJo were still going strong. Their new friends had been talking about some ceremony at midnight at the top of the hill, an alignment of the planets, a blending of astral planes, an ascension to a higher order. Tia and I shared a look and then politely declined and headed back to crash at the van, in separate beds, of course. The next morning, we both awoke early, but a little hungover, but glad the 2 of us had decided to get away for the weekend. The festival hadn't been that crowded, but I was pleased she suggested it. When we got back to campus, we put an ad up yet again for the 3rd bedroom in our place, empty since we moved in. We both dove into our classes, but Tia had these occasional flashes of memory of people she thought she knew at one time, but the details were lost. She asked around campus and went to some support groups. A few others had the same symptoms, but was more of an occasional annoyance than a real problem. I pretended to have some memory flashes too, just to go along with her. We were getting closer, still just friends, but I was being optimistic. Come spring, she sprung on me a new plan. She was convinced that the last festival had something to do with these memory issues and convinced me we should take in the spring version in March. Same idea, crafty tables, seminars, lots of music and beer. So camper van again and away to the festival. It was sunny and hot, and people seemed to be in a friendly spring break mentality. Same craft tables as before, same great music, same smiling crowd, same beer tent, and the same religious area with its blend of the past and present, sort of a pagan meets the Rapture. We managed to wobble back to the van to change into warmer clothes for the evening, and well, one thing led to another, and before we knew it, we were in bed together, naked. The sex was good, it was great, but afterward, well, we just got dressed and headed out. Apparently, we were now friends with benefits. Just before midnight, Tia announced that she wanted to leave the dance and check out the ceremony up on the hilltop. I wasn't that keen, but decided to humor her, so we joined about 30 other people, shivering in the night breeze, surrounding a weird scarecrow-like thing someone had erected on the hilltop. Come midnight, I was about to leave when the scarecrow was enveloped in a bright beam of light from the sky. "This is it," said Tia, as she tried to pull herself out of my arms. I had a bad feeling about this. "No, stay here with me. Please, don't leave." "I have to see what's there," she said. "Don't worry, I'll be back." I never could say no to her. I relaxed my arms a bit. "I'll wait for you." I bent down, gave her a kiss, and opened my arms. "Love you, Tia." She smiled back, that big, beautiful smile. "I know," she said. And then she turned, and in a few steps was gone, just as the light faded. I shivered in the wind. There weren't many others up here with me, enjoying the view of the night sky. I was tired and cold and had to pee, so I headed down to my car. I still had an hour's drive back to my small residence room. Maybe next year I'll try to share a house. The end. Did you like this story and its tweaking of what reality was? Is that the sort of story you might have imagined? The next one was written 12 years ago in January of 2012, so it's maybe not quite as polished. Same type of prompt. 3 photos. The images were of a building in downtown Taipei, Taiwan, 2 guys sitting together on a rooftop, and 2 girls biking down a road. What would these conjure up for you? And now the story. It's about 575 words long. Tom's Excellent Adventure. Taipei was a big change for a high school student from rural Ontario. Tom's English teacher would have never believed that the school's star quarterback and her worst student was now an ESL teacher in Taiwan. Tom found it hard to believe, too. Up until now, he had only left his small town on football trips to other area schools, so this had been a culture shock of international airports, cramped hours in the air, and a loud and incomprehensible town. The first few days were a blur of students with confusing names, rules and regulations to the school, and the crush and chaos of a large Asian city. Luckily, Tom's new students overlooked any gaps in his knowledge in their eagerness to learn some Canadian slang, complete with a rural Canadian accent. Friday, he had met Todd, another new teacher who was also on his first journey from a small town. In Australia, it turned out. They had bumped into each other at an after-school staff party and seemed to fit together from the start. Tom was glad to have a new buddy to hang out with, especially a fellow jock, as he'd been missing the constant companionship of all his friends on the football team. The 2 of them shared a room in the small dorm and a table in the cafe, and swapped lesson plans and argued the relative merits of Canadian versus Australian football. Tom soon lost his homesickness as he and Todd explored Taiwan together, from rooftop picnics to local clubs to bike rides in the country. The school's group of teachers included 2 women from San Francisco that were working their way together around the world. Annie and Gail seemed equally inseparable, day and night, also exploring the city or countryside, so that the 4 of them often ran into each other. The girls flirted and joked with everyone, but seemed to usually keep to themselves. So Tom was surprised and intrigued when they asked him and Todd to double date. They all headed out that evening, starting with spicy local food in the market, then several dance clubs and quarts of ice-cold beer and shooters of expensive scotch, and finally ending up in the Red House district in a karaoke bar. Tom and Todd faced off against Annie and Gail, each side trying to outdo the other, until all 4 finished off in a medley of ABBA tunes, much to the amusement and applause of everyone else in the bar. Todd had just excused himself to go to the bathroom, and Tom was trying to decide which one of the girls to make a move on first when Gail leaned over and gave him a hug. "You guys are great," she said. "It's such a relief for Annie and me to be able to go out clubbing without worrying about getting hit on by other women or guys. But I'm sure it's the same for you too, right?" Tom looked at her blankly. "Oh my God," she said. "Didn't you know we were gay?" "You really are a small tomboy, aren't you?" Her eyes widened. "But you 2 are gay, right? I mean, you're always together and so comfortable with each other." And she laughed. "Oh, well, if you aren't, well, you should be. You guys are so obviously a couple. Good luck, buddy." Just then, Todd slipped back into his seat next to Tom. "Good luck with what?" said Todd. The end. Well, I kind of just dropped you there, didn't I? Well, what's next for Tom's excellent adventure? Stay tuned for more podcasts, either my own stories or some of the classics. If you subscribe to my newsletter, you'll get the next installment as soon as it's ready. If you enjoy this reading or have some of the classics you'd like to hear, leave me a comment. And do check out my other posts on my Substack at ravensview.substack.com. Ta-ta for now.